Well, it's a beautiful Friday. No, I'm lying. It's raining, but it's beautiful. Why? Because it's still draft weekend. The Minnesota Vikings, we know what happened with their picks. Fellas, I was at the draft. The fans were excited, but this is the funniest thing I've ever seen. The draft still had like 7 to 8 picks, and Gabe, you saw this too. As soon as the Vikings picked, everybody cheered, and there was a mass exodus. Everybody was like, all right, there was no trade back. We can go home. I'm done with this. So it was a fun one, man, but I enjoyed myself last night. And I saw it, like I said, I saw Gabe. We got to hear the fan reaction and everything. Reggie wasn't there, but his counterpart, Julia Daniels, I saw her getting some reaction stuff. I know Carol Levin's going to be excited about that today. But fellas, it's time to get locked in. We got to get locked in on this show. I'm Ron Johnson. That's Luke Inman. That's Sam Extra. That's Gabe Henderson. This is Locked On Sports Minnesota, and this is the Friday Roundtable. So let's get locked in. Luke, what you got?
Yeah, Ron, you touched on it. No quarterback, no defense, no trade down. Vikes go chalk with a wide receiver in round 1. Go get their guy, Jordan Addison, wide receiver, USC. We got to break it all down coming up next.
And we're going to talk a ton of draft, but we also got to touch on the Wolves season concluding in Game 5, and also can the Wild extend their season tonight?
Yeah, and I'm going to talk winners of the best and worst dressed of the NFL draft. And Jordan Addison, I'll put him in the top dressed athletes at the NFL Combine this year, NFL draft this year. So that's my talking point.
I'm excited to hear you say the worst, because I guess I didn't see all the picks. So I didn't see some of the outfits, but I know Jordan Addison's pink suit and those white glasses looking like Soldier Boy. I definitely want to hear your worst dress, though. But I want to talk about QB movement. Everybody thought the Vikings were going to maybe take a quarterback in the first round, maybe move up in the draft to take a quarterback. Everybody said Anthony Richardson is a project. He goes to the Colts. Will Levis, the social media Zach Wilson of this year's draft. Some said he's like Justin Herbert. He didn't even get drafted in the first round. So we're going to talk about QB movement. The Vikings didn't take a quarterback. The Packers did what we thought they would do, which is not take a receiver. So we'll break all that down coming up on Locked On Sports Minnesota. Remember, you can download Amazon Fire and Roku. You can download the Locked On Sports Minnesota app right there on your TV. Just search Locked On Sports Minnesota. And for all the people out there wondering what Gabe Henderson looks like, there's your chance. You can also go to YouTube and you can subscribe. Just need an email address. And when you subscribe to YouTube, just go to Locked On Sports Minnesota, hit that subscribe button. But fellas, let's jump into this. Luke, I want to understand what's going on with this draft. Again, everybody was talking about what was going to happen with the Vikings. I thought DB. Drop it for us.
Yeah, well, just in a vacuum, Jordan Addison, who is he? Is he any good? I said this last night on the postcast. You don't win the Biletnikoff Award for nation's best wide receiver on accident. I mean, it takes serious talent and skill, and this dude's got it. And jumping from college to the pros, and Ron, you know this, it takes 2-3 years for a lot of these guys to develop and adjust to the game, but he's already so polished as a route runner. I think he immediately replaces Adam Thielen as the wide receiver 2 in this offense, and that's huge because it helps everyone on this offense. That helps JJ see less double and triple coverage. It lets KJ Osborne slide back into his more natural role and spot at wide receiver 3. That was a huge topic that I think kind of flew under the radar the last 2 months. What would KJ Osborne look like if he was forced to be wide receiver 2 in this offense? Would he be consistent enough to win on the outside and make plays, things like that? Can't say for certain, but now he can be that great complementary piece as the third option like he has been. And plus now TJ Hawkinson continues to get one-on-one looks. He thrives at up the seam and being that kind of safety blanket. I know everyone dropped this kid if you followed the combine or the pre-draft process. Once he showed up to Indy at 5'11", $171, and he didn't run the blazing 40 time or 3-cone. But guys, the NFL is a lot like ebbs and flows. And ever since the league started adjusting with these big-bodied cornerbacks 5, 6, 7 years ago, the boundary guys like Richard Sherman, Darrelle Revis, to stop the Julio Jones and Megatrons. If you notice, the league really started to adjust. They went smaller, quicker, shiftier wide receivers that are tough to get your hands on. The Stephon Diggs, the Odell Beckham Jr.'s, the Julian Edelmans, they go on, and it works. And now you look across the league at some of the best wide receivers in the game, Tyreek Hill and A.J. Brown, just for example. What do they both have in common? A complementary weapon across from them. Devontae Smith, Jalen Waddle, both guys who, no, they're not big-bodied, big alpha number 1 guys, but but phenomenal route runners, great hands, and can win those one-on-one matchups. And that's what KOC said he needed. I need a guy who can win these one-on-one matchups. It's a shoot-'em-out league now. It's who's got the ball last. Sam talked about it the day the season ended. Let's double down on offense. They certainly have done that, and they reset the contract perspective from Thielen going to Jordan Addison on this rookie deal as well. So I think this was a pick for Justin Jefferson as much as it was for anyone else.
Yeah, it's Gabe. What you think?
Yeah, I really do think it was a probably a better pick for JJ than anyone else. Luke, you hit that right on the head, because if JJ wants to get 2,000 receiving yards this year, like he said, he's going to need someone that's really going to take the pressure off of him and take some of those double teams off of him. So adding a guy in Jordan Addison, a guy that's proven to be a number one wide receiver, he can play inside and out, that adds so much value. I mean, if you look at the college game, the hash marks are a lot wider. So there's less space for receivers, especially if you're playing in the slot to the short side of the field. The game in the NFL is played in the middle of the field. So that gives Jordan Addison more space to create space from defenders and give Justin Jefferson other opportunities to get open downfield. So I'm very interested and excited to see what this move can be for this Minnesota Vikings team. I've been on record the past 2 months saying if Jordan Addison is there at 23, that's your guy. So I know I've been getting I got flack the past 2 months about that. And I was like, I'm sticking to my guns. Like this is a game-changing wide receiver. And clearly Kevin O'Connell and kwesi-adofo-mensah, they said this is a guy that they wanted. So I'm excited to see what it looks like in September. Like training camp is going to be fun in August this year. I mean, gearing up for September. We saw what's his name? Caleb Evans saying, oh my gosh, he tweeted, oh my gosh, training camp is going to be crazy this year. So the fact that guys are going to be competing, are going to be battling, and JJ finally has a true wide receiver too, with KJ Osborne also. KJ Osborne, like he could be 2B. Like he is a solid receiver. So I'm excited to see how this Minnesota Vikings offense fares in 2023.
Yeah, Sam?
Yeah, I will admit, I had a couple moments of panic right out of the gate where I thought, okay, they didn't trade down, so they didn't recoup any picks. They left amazing defensive players on the board like Nolan Smith and Deonte Banks, who I think would have been wonderful fits. And they took the fourth wide receiver off the board almost as if it was a panic move, like, oh, there's a run on receivers, we got to get one. And that made me a little nervous. And then I looked at his testing, and it's okay, he's not a phenomenal tester at the combine. He's undersized. But then I think hearing Kwesi and KOC talk about why they liked him, it kind of talked me off the ledge a little bit to hear that they think his separation is unbelievable. And that even though he didn't run a perfect straight line 40 or a 10-yard split or whatever, he still is really good at carrying his pads, winning, quote unquote, every blade of grass and finding that separation. And then hearing KOC talk about the way that they're going to pair up KJ and Jordan Addison and run their routes away from Justin Jefferson to divert coverage. I think that's going to work out brilliantly. So he is a very productive player who, if he was picked last year, I think Luke Inman pointed this out, might have been a top 5 or top 10 pick off of that Pittsburgh season. Maybe just regressed ever so slightly in that new USC offense, but was still very productive. So I think it is a good pick, and I think he's going to be a good player. The big question is, how do they address the defense today and tomorrow? I think we'll feel a little better if they are able to get some impact players in these next 4 picks.
Yeah, the way I go with it is there's 2 things to this. One, we really don't know, and I'm not going to ever put this on a kid, but think about what they did to Stephon Diggs when they drafted Laquan Treadwell. That was the thought. Laquan Treadwell was going to be the guy. Stephon Diggs and Adam Thielen stepped up. I think this is also a wake-up call for KJ Osborne. I think KJ Osborne is going to hit an overdrive. Like, he's going to push harder, work out harder. I think as a group, as three receivers, I think these 3 can be really, really good. And I think you sprinkle in Jalen Naylor, but I think those 3 can be really, really good. I think Jordan Addison, when you look at his passer rating, 148 passer rating when thrown to him, there's a kid that catches everything. He's a kid that can run the bubble screen. He can run some gimmick stuff. I mean, when you think about the San Francisco 49ers and KOC adding a big tight end, re-signing CJ Ham, they still want to run the ball. And maybe it is just with Alexander Mattison, but they want to run the ball. But this is a team that is going to be built to pass in situations at all times. When you put a guy, you don't draft a guy like Jordan Addison in the first round, and you don't plan on still trying to air the ball out with a guy like Kirk Cousins. I think addressing the defense will come. But, a lot of people always say, go get the best guy on the board. Don't reach for your guy. Like if we need a cornerback and they reach and then it's like, I wish we would have got so-and-so. This is not a 1 year. Like Kwesi's like, look, I'm not just here for one more year. I'm here for 5, 6, 7. I mean, I want to make this my lifetime GM job. KOC, same thing. He probably wants to be a 10, 15-year head coach. How do you do that? You have to build. And so Justin Jefferson now has Jordan Addison. You look at every other team that has 2 receivers, T. Higgins, Jamar Chase. It's a duo. Everybody's looking for Odell Beckham. He has now Zay Flowers plus Rashad Bateman. Like everybody's trying to figure out, how do I get a duo? Because you no longer can just have one receiver and then a bunch of other guys. It's becoming not to say it's like basketball when they create super teams, but receiving cores, it's like I need another guy, because if I'm just getting doubled and tripled, we're screwed. And I think that's what KOC probably was worried about, is Justin Jefferson facing double coverage, shaded coverage at all times. Do it, but now you have a guy in Jordan Addison that can hurt you, and so then you have to kind of play more true coverage. And Justin Jefferson, like you said, you put those two on one side, Justin Jefferson backside, they're going to have to show their hand early at the snap. They can't hide it after Kirk Cousin gets the ball in his hand. It's going to be exciting to see, and I'm looking forward to it. We got to move on because I want to talk about draft moments. The Baltimore Ravens, shout out to the Baltimore Ravens. They sent me this brick. Basically brick by brick, they built the team, and this is from 2002, or not from 2002. Sorry, this is 2002 has my name on it. They the Legends community, and they talk about the 741 guys that were drafted wore the black helmet from the teams beginning in 1996. And so shout out to the Ravens for that. And so when you think about moments like that, there's other moments, and one is outfits. I think Jordan Addison was one of the guys that stole the show. I know Jalen Rose, Detroit guy, my Detroit player, Pink Gators, Biggie Small. I mean, hey, that's what Jordan Addison was doing. So Gabe, what's going on with the outfits, man? What was the best dress and worst dress moments of the night?
Man, best dressed, I got to go with what's his name, Bijan Robinson. Like it was smooth, It was sleek. He had the red pen, so it kind of fit with him going to the Atlanta Falcons. And then when he opened his jacket, it was, all those pictures on the inside. So him, Bryce Young both of those guys were probably in my top 2. If Jordan Addison wasn't a Viking, I wouldn't put him. I would probably put him as worst. But if you look at Jalen Carter's outfit, defensive lineman that got drafted by the Eagles, his outfit reminded me of Pinky and Friday After Next, the pink and purple suit. Like, remember that? He's like, you costing me money, CW. Didn't I tell you I was gonna fire if you hit somebody else? Like, his outfit gave me Pinky vibes. Pink suit, purple shirt. Like it just didn't go. And I'm just like what are we doing right now, man? Like a top 10 pick. I'm sure you got a stylist somewhere, and like this is what you go with. Like,
who from the Eagles wore something like that? Was that London Cox or London Fletcher? Or no?
I think so. Yeah,
Fletcher Cox. Yeah. Oh man, like with the blouse. With the blouse and the that's his was silver, but this has that. I mean, he did go to the Eagles. This has that vibe. Like it has that blouse vibe. Oh man, I didn't see that one. Does kind of have a little pinky to it.
It definitely gives me Pinky vibes, and it gives me Pepto-Bismol vibes too with the pink suit. So I'm guessing
that's like supposed to be lilac purple because the shirt is dark purple. So I'm guessing he's probably had 50 shades of purple on. Maybe he thought he was gonna be a Viking or something.
But the suit is always supposed to be darker than the shirt. Like that's like that's kind of like universal.
That's day one training camp.
Unless you're Don Johnson and you're going for the Miami Vice vibe with the white suit and then like a purple shirt, you could do that.
But if you go white, that's different. You can't go white on white unless it's a white out. But at the same time, you can't go pink and then a purple silk shirt. Like the silk shirt was made out of like my do-rag that I wear, like that same fabric. So it was.
Yeah, even his pocket square is weird because his pocket square is like blue.
By far the worst suit on draft night.
How about, I don't know how much you guys saw from the broadcast, but just best or funniest moments. Lucas Van Ness, when he was picked from the Packers, just got mean. First of all, he's got 3 good looking ladies sitting right next to him that kind of stole the show. But I don't know if his buddy, his brother or what, comes up and just flops right on top of him, blocks the whole view. Some uncle or dad comes over and rips him off, and everybody gets a little weird. It got a little awkward, but there's always some goofy moments. You never know what's going to happen. CD Lamb on his phone, texting somebody. Maybe his girl tried to look at his phone, and he said,
That's Ron's favorite moment.
Yeah, is that Ron's favorite moment?
You know what?
Yeah.
I do see his homie sitting on him. That's just one of his friends knowing he wants to go viral. Like, that's the problem with today's kid is everybody wants to go viral. And his friend, like the fact that he jumped on him like that and did the girlfriend thing, that was literally an inside. I guarantee that's an inside TikTok joke or something that they're like, look, I'm doing this. I don't care what you say. And the dad didn't know. Like, you don't ever tell parents about the joke. No. But a good one for me too last year was Jalen Waddle. The Jalen Waddle like walk off, like everybody was celebrating and cheering, and he's like stares at the camera and then walks off because he actually got interviewed this week about it, and he said what happened was he got the pick, 5 pick, like Gabe said, it comes a little early, 5 picks early. He got the pick, so he had already got the phone call that hey, we're taking you, and then they went to commercial break and they had celebrated. So when the cameras actually cut to him to do the TV version, he's like, man, we had already celebrated. He's like, my family was acting up just for the cameras. And he's like, I don't know what they was doing. That's why I walked off like, man, we already celebrated. And he like looked, because everybody thought he was mad or like it was just weird. He like looked at his family and then like walks off. And everybody was making fun of him. And then he was like, no, we had already celebrated. He's like, I don't know why they was being so extra for ESPN. He's like, we had already done this.
I think
you got the camera and the director guy behind the scenes going, hey, can you guys reenact it? Can you guys do that same thing?
Exactly.
Like
he said exactly. That's basically what happened is the guy was like action. And then it was like, and with the 2022, you know, whatever. And he's like looking like, man, I'm out of here. Like, I ain't doing it.
Like another underrated moment last night was when Tyree Wilton picked up Roger Goodell. So of course we know
he picked him up.
A few guys He picked him up. So if you guys have been doing that the past couple of years, and Roger Goodell always looks like he's like unentertained. He's like, all right, get this guy off me. Like last night, like Roger Goodell bent his knees when he got picked up. And I'm like, hold on, like this guy braced for this. Like Roger braced for this moment. So that was like a very underrated moment. A grown man getting picked up and bending his knees. So last night was very, very entertaining.
Like, that's the equivalent of like the hands on the like this with the feet crossed behind you, like. Oh man!
He bent his knees. I was like, all right, it's official.
When those big linemen are coming at you. You got to brace.
Well, Jordan Addison clearly, if he wasn't a Viking, but you know what? I'm see my Detroit players. Tim's from my hooligans. You know, man. Come on now. Detroit players, we do the pink suits. We do the baby blue suits. You know, we're going to have the matching gaiters with it or matching shoes. Like, it's a Detroit thing. So, and I know he's not from Detroit. I think he's from Florida, though, right?
Who?
Maryland.
Addison is
Maryland.
From Maryland.
So that's that East Coast vibe, you know, that Maryland, D.C. So, you know, when you think about Jordan Addison's outfit, I like it. I mean, I know Jalen Rose because Jalen Rose always breaks down the suits of the draft. So I'm looking forward to seeing what he has to say today. But we got to move on. Before we do, though, we're going to talk about QBs because the Vikings were supposed to draft a QB, or at least people thought they were. It's not over yet. But a lot of QBs dropped, and the Vikings didn't take one. They did take Jordan Addison. We're going to talk about that quick. Before we do, we have a word from our sponsors.
Looking for a delicious snack but don't want all the sugar and calories? You need the best tasting protein bar in the world. It's Built Bar. They are healthy. They taste amazing. They're good. They're good for you. 100% real chocolate, unbelievable flavors like peanut butter brownie, cookies and cream, brownie batter puff. And you say to yourself, how can that be good for you? Well, I promise you it is, because it is low in sugar. It's low in calories. It is high in protein, 17 grams of protein. You can get Built Bars in store at the Walmart pharmacy section or at Sam's Club. Get the 13-bar box, the 4-bar box. Stock up on some Built Bars or head to Built.com today and buy them online. Use the promo code LOCKEDON15. Built Bars, they're good and they're good for you.
Well, fellas, it's day 2 of the NFL draft. Everybody's going to be sitting around waiting for this 6 p.m. I know I'm trying to get a workout in. I know everybody's going to be getting some snacks. I know we're doing the Vikings have their press conference today with the rookie or he's not a rookie yet, but the draft pick. And then we're going to do some breakdowns, myself, Gabe, and Tatum. Looking forward to that. But then when 6 p.m. comes, we got to do a little bit of waiting. The Vikings have a 3rd round pick, and it could be QB. But let's talk about that, fellas. Quarterback, to me, I thought it was going to be a higher. Now, there was an NFL record of 3 quarterbacks in the top 5. That hasn't happened. That only happened like 5 times in NFL history. And when you look at those 3 this year and then the 3 before, like Archie Manning's draft had it, Zach Wilson's draft had it. I feel like this group, Anthony Richardson, CJ Stroud, and Bryce Young, have the chance to be the best 3 quarterbacks to be drafted in the top 5 of all the other groups. When you guys get a chance to go back and look at it, because of all those groups, there was only like 1 quarterback that made it out of that group, and the other 2 were other than Archie Manning, and we're not going way back to then. But I'm talking about the years we remember. We're not going back to the 70s. It felt like those other groups didn't have a good group of 5, so you never really know getting a quarterback that high if it's going to even work. So the Vikings passed and went with Jordan Addison. People were saying they could have went Will Levis. People were saying they could have went cornerback, but they got Jordan Addison. But what's going on with the quarterbacks after the top 5 picks, quarterbacks? And then it kind of was like wait, what are we going to do with all these quarterbacks? Running backs went high. Thoughts on that, Luke?
Yeah, it was a wild and crazy draft, man. Nobody saw Jamar Gibbs and 2 running backs going in, the top 12 picks. Nobody saw that coming. And once you saw, you're right, Ron, once you saw 3 quarterbacks go in the first 4 picks, you're sitting there thinking, okay, not only is Will Levis going to go off the board here pretty quick, but Hendon Hooker, everybody's going to be looking around saying, all right, who's going to move up for Hendon Hooker? And by the time the Vikings get on the clock at pick 23, nobody's going to be left. You're going to be looking at guys like Tanner McKee or Dorian Thompson-Robinson from UCLA. I said in a vacuum, you got to love Jordan Addison as the player. And the name of the draft, really, guys, at the end of the day, is just adding good football players, and they did that. But you got to wonder, though, for the Vikes specifically, does any of it matter without a quarterback of the future? I mean, that's what people are asking themselves when they wake up this morning. This is the move that we judge Kwesi on in 2-3 years down the road, pending what their quarterback situation looks like and how good Will Levis and Hendon Hooker end up being. Because I don't know about you guys, as soon as the dust settled, I immediately thought to myself here, okay, so what's the plan then at quarterback in 2024? There was so much discussion about no team has done more homework on these top 5 quarterbacks than the Minnesota Vikings. Will they package and move all the way up? Rumors of moving up to maybe even number 3 for Anthony Richardson. Now it feels like they almost have to keep bringing back Kirk, or at least in 2024, and kicking the can down the road for yet another season once they get to that point. I will say, once we saw Young, Stroud, and Richardson go in the first 4 picks, again, I thought there was 0 chance either of those guys, Will Levis or Hendon Hooker, would be on the clock at 23. Sure enough, they're both there. They worked him out, Will Levis specifically. It's not like they didn't do their homework, guys. They worked him out at the combine. They worked him out at the pro day. And most importantly, remember this, KOC knows Liam Cohen, the offensive coordinator at Kentucky. So they did all their homework and all the research. You just don't take a quarterback just to take one. You got to love the guy. And as a GM, Kwesi only gets 1 swing at a quarterback. And clearly they weren't going to be pressured into taking a guy they just weren't in love with.
Yeah, Gabe, what you think?
Yeah, I think if you go quarterback in the first round, you better be damn sure about who he's going to be. And Will Levis just, in my opinion, just isn't that guy. If you look at just the stable of quarterbacks this year, the top 3 were selected in the top 5 picks. After that, it's a big drop. Yeah, you can probably put Hendon Hooker as like a 3B, but since he's 25 years old, he's going to be on a rookie contract. His rookie contract will be expiring when he's 30. That's a risk right there. So
that's crazy.
I'm not sure why Will Levis, his name is still being mentioned as far as like some of the best quarterbacks, but we understand how propaganda works in the NFL and selling tickets and everything. So it's a similar story with my guy last year and Malik Willis. I think Adam Schefter had him slotted as high as the number 2 overall pick, and then goes all the way down to the third round. So you better be sure, but I do think there is an opportunity for this Minnesota Vikings team to move up to the second round to get a guy in Hendon Hooker if he is the guy. But you do have to give up a little bit. You probably have to give up, your 3rd this year as well as a 3rd next year, if not a 2nd. So we'll see how the draft board goes today. But these are the rounds that Kwesi flourishes in, and that 2nd and 3rd round, those middle rounds of the draft where you can get some of those steals. I mean, look at a guy in Brian Asamoah last year, but yeah, when it comes to quarterback, if you're not sure on anyone outside of the top 3, why give a guy a 5-year deal if you're not 100% sold on him?
Yeah, Sam.
Yeah, if you don't come away from today miraculously getting a Levis or a Hooker, and I don't think they're in on Levis. Like, I think Hooker would be the only guy. It'd be pretty disconcerting to go into next draft having let Kirk Cousins walk and you don't have your quarterback of the future. That would be a pretty nerve-wracking spot to be. So I get it. I get why fans are a little concerned about this quarterback position, but let's be honest, like, it was never a great possibility that the Vikings got one of the best quarterbacks in this draft. We knew this. We knew that picking at 23 it was going to be almost impossible to trade way up to get Richardson. I think that's the guy they had eyes for. He went number 4, so that possibility was immediately off the table. I think that Dorian Thompson-Robinson is an intriguing developmental piece, but I don't think there's anybody really, maybe beyond Hooker, who intrigues me a lot, and I've liked him the whole time. Other than Hooker, I don't think that there's anybody that I would trust giving the keys to in 2024. And his drop didn't really surprise me just because of the injury and the age, but I kind of was surprised that Levis fell just because there was legitimate steam that he was going to be a top 5 pick and then ends up not going in the first round. We'll see where he lands. I would project they're both gone in the second round. Guys, there's a lot of cornerbacks out there for the Vikings to take in the third round. QB may again have to wait till day 3.
Yeah, and I go with I'm not going to say the GM's name, but listening to a GM talk, he and I love when GMs say this, no disrespect. Whenever you have to start a sentence with no disrespect, it's disrespectful. And people were asking him that, like, hey, Will Levis was, slated as Mel Kiper's guy, blah, blah, blah. And he literally said, no disrespect, but Mel Kiper has built a business off of just text messages. He was like, literally, it's just people texting him stuff, and he's like, he doesn't watch the tape, he doesn't understand the players, and again, he said no disrespect, but it was very disrespectful. But he's saying, like, what happens is these guys get these text messages from other, like, scouts or GMs saying, oh man, the kid is strong, he's big, and then they start to build this persona on TV for us to consume, and then we all start consuming it, and then we throw it back up too, and like baby birds getting fed, and and then all of a sudden it becomes a mushroom cloud of just, whoa, Will Levis is the best quarterback out there. And then when he does the stupid things like putting mayonnaise in his coffee, eating banana peels, throwing from his knees to try to throw through a goalpost, it starts to become social media hype and less of like, turn the tape on. And even when you turn the tape on, the kid looks good. But I agree with what Gabe said. I think Luke said it too. If there's not a guy there in the first round that you're in love with, you don't take a lukewarm pick of a quarterback. You got to be absolutely enamored with him. And that's why I think some of these late round guys, like a Tanner McKee out of Stanford, 6'6", 231 pounds, that's a guy that's built big enough to sit in the pocket. But if he's smart, and he went to Stanford, so he's smart. So he can sit back. Yeah, what?
Right, you make a good point there, and you just look at the quarterbacks. Tanner McKee is the only quarterback that the Vikings invited on a top 30 visit this year, so that's a really good point. So clearly they see something in Tanner McKee or someone in those later rounds if the top 3 guys aren't there. So that's a really good point in Tanner McKee.
Ron, I'm curious, just real quick, Ron or Gabe, of these top 3 quarterbacks that went in the top 4, which landing spot do you like the best? Because the problem with quarterbacks going so early, it means you just got drafted by a really bad team and the surrounding cast isn't great. For me, of the 3, I think I like Anthony Richardson's landing spot with Jonathan Taylor, Quentin Nelson, a good offensive line. You got a guy like Michael Pittman Jr. That's me personally. I think Houston's still a long ways away. That's why I didn't like to trade all the way back up, giving up future picks. I'm curious, Ron, though, your thoughts.
Yeah, because they got the offensive coordinator from the Eagles, right? As the head coach. And so when you think about that, Jalen Hurts, he's going to treat Anthony Richardson like Jalen Hurts. You're getting a bigger, stronger, faster. Now, we're not going to say he's Jalen Hurts because Jalen Hurts is legit. But you're getting a bigger, stronger version of what you think you can do with that offense. And like you said, Jonathan Taylor, you can run the ball. So now you have that 1-2 quarterback running back punch. Where in Anthony Richardson at Florida was never going to do that. Florida's Florida. They're always going to spread people out. They're always going to try to attack. And so when you put them in an offense, it was like, hey, man, I don't need you to throw the ball 40, 50 times a game. I need you to do what Jalen Hurts does. Let's watch this film. And again, when Kevin O'Connell came over from the Rams, I talked to a couple players. They said literally their entire iPad reel was Rams cut-ups. Here's the plays we're going to run. And so if you don't think that the Colts are watching Eagles cut-ups right now, I guarantee they're going to push the quarterback in quarterback sneaks from the 5-yard line. They're going to do everything because he said, I need a quarterback that can do what I know, which is what Jalen Hurts did. And who's the best at that? Anthony Richardson. So I do agree. I think Anthony Richardson is in the best spot. I think Bryce Young has the best coach. I think Frank Reich is going to get him going, and he has Adam Thielen to help him out. Now, who knows? Bryce Young might not even start. It might end up being the Red Rifle. Yeah. But I do like the Bryce Young. I really like Anthony Richardson though because of that run game and that interior line. And again, the Colts still have more picks. So it's what are they going to add to this? Reggie Wayne told me this about their receiving core. They're not going to take the top off, but they're really good, consistent runners, and they have to find a scheme. And they bought Reggie Wayne back as a receivers coach, clearly, kind of like Keenan McCardell. When you have a good receivers coach, you don't let him walk. And so they bought Reggie Wayne back. That was the one thing that the Eagles coach made sure he did. He's like, hey, I need you, bro. You got to stay. And so Reggie
Ron,
Wayne.
how about this? Colts had the 4th pick today. Check this out. Michael Mayer, big consensus #1 tight end, still on the board from Notre Dame, and Darnell Washington, another freak cheat code physical specimen. How about teaming up one of those guys inside that offense again with Jonathan Taylor Pittman and Anthony Richardson? That would be a lot of fun too.
Yeah, I mean, again, he's not going to do exactly what the Eagles did because he's not going to have A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith. But yeah, I think it's going to be a little bit of the Rams, a little bit of the Eagles, and then a lot of bit of the 49ers. Like, watch out for some of this 49ers look stuff because that's the key. Tight end. Everybody wants to get a tight end. That's why the Buffalo Bills went and got the tight end from Utah. That's the way it goes. TJ Hockenson with Kirk Cousins.
Think about how much height they got if they get a guy in Michael Mayer. Like, you already have Alec Pierce, who's 6'4". You got Michael Pittman, who's 6'3", and you got the quarterback Anthony Richardson, who's 6. Like that is like that.
They're big.
You're bullying teams at that point. So the fact that
unless they play the Vikings and they're up 33, then you're
hey, too soon. Wait a minute.
But Reggie Wayne said that though, Gabe. That's a great point. Reggie Wayne said we're big, we're not fast. Other than Paris Campbell, he said we're big, we're not fast, and he said what we're going to do is we're going to be really good route runners, and we're going to run comebacks, we're going to run curls. And so, what's the best? A big, strong 6'4" quarterback that can see over the line and can throw curls, can throw digs,
and he has a good offensive
comebacks.
line.
And he has
the
really
best
good
player of
line.
them all, Quentin Nelson. He's
correct.
The biggest.
They're not asking him to throw 60-yard, bombs down the field to JJ. They're like, look, man, I got big receivers. Let's just throw some fade routes. Let's throw some 15. Like, how good can you be at hitting the target from 15 yards away and just dropping it in the bucket? And again, I think that's a good system for Anthony Richardson to be in, because if you think about the Eagles, they do what's necessary, because people always wonder, like, what are you going to do with Jalen Hurts? Like, what's the plan here? And we saw it. It's let's find an offense that works for my quarterback. I'm not going to make my quarterback work for my offense. And that's why I think that was a great pickup. One, for the coach to get that coach, and then two, now to go get their quarterback of the future, because I think he has set up the best. I know Gabe has to take off, so we're going to get one last quick one before we get Gabe out of here. And we still got the Wolves talk. We still got the Wild talk. Before we get Gabe out of here, last quick one. Fellas, day 2 and 3. But speaking of that 3rd round pick, I'll start with you, Gabe. What do you think the Vikings are going to do today?
Yeah, if they don't move up to get a 2nd rounder, I think DeMarvion Overshown, the linebacker from University of Texas, is a great fit for this Minnesota Vikings defense. He's a safety turn linebacker, 6'4", 230 pounds, can run sideline to sideline, pretty much do whatever you want. The only knock on him is that he hasn't had many reps at linebacker outside of last year. Last year was his best year at that position. So if you're Kwesi, and he's known to take a stab on a guy that has young experience, a lot of potential, a lot of teams are going to pass up on that guy to be that next, prototypical linebacker. I mean, he's just a freakishly athletic player. And so when you have a linebacker like that falls to you, I mean, he may even go in the 4th round if teams continue to pass up on him. If he falls to this Minnesota Vikings team, I don't see why you cannot take him. Jordan Hicks, you don't know what his future looks like after this year. Why not get younger, get stronger, get better, let a guy like DeMarvion Overshown learn under that tutelage with Brian Flores' defense? I mean, we know you don't really need an elite pass rusher in this defense, because the Vikings, they're going to blitz, 60% of the time. So linebacker play is going to be key in this defense this year. And I believe DeMarvion Overshown gets some reps from special teams in year 1 like Brian Asamoah did, and then year 2 can really flourish under this game.
Yeah, what you got, Luke?
Yeah, Gabe brings up a great point. If you're going to blitz that much, all the pressure now becomes put on the cornerbacks. And right now, outside and behind Andrew Booth Jr. and Caleb Evans, They got nobody right now. The depth is scary thin, and you just cannot have enough good cover cornerbacks in this pass-happy league. Luckily, it's a stacked cornerback class this year, just like last year. Remember, they found a Caleb Evans last year on day 3, too. They could grab a guy like Darius Rush from South Carolina, who I absolutely love as a boundary outside cornerback when Byron Murphy slides inside in the nickel. Kai Blue Kelly is a name to write down from Stanford. Another guy I really like. He's got the NFL genes. His dad, Brian Kelly, played for the Bucs for almost 10 years. And then how about the local kid, Terrell Smith of the Gophers? If you just look at last year's tape, a lot of people said last year's tape only, he's a top 10 cornerback in this class. So there's a lot to choose from, but I think they have to go cornerback with one of their next 2 picks at minimum. If not, maybe even double down by the time this draft is over.
Sam.
There's going to be a crazy run on corners, guys. I'm looking at the best available corners, and we've studied a lot of these guys because we know the Vikings are cornerback needy. There's 15 guys that I think are really good, and in other years might be like top 2 round picks. That's how deep this cornerback class is. So I think that definitely Terrell Smith is going to be available. Darius Rush could be available. Jacorian Bennett. Travius Hodges-Tomlinson, Jalen Jones is a personal favorite of mine. And you really can't go wrong, I think, with any of them. So there's almost certainly going to be a good cornerback available. And do they even kick that can down the road one more round and wait till the 4th? I still think defensive line is a big need for this team, whether it's tackle or end. Take the best defensive lineman available at pick 87 because I think you need to fortify that group in a bad way.
Yeah, for me, I mean, I agree with you on Sam on that on corners. I mean, some of these guys are going to be gone probably before the Vikings get to it, but Keely Ringo, you look at Eli Ricks out of Alabama, and and again, I shouldn't be school driven because it's not about the school they went to. I know there's other guys at other schools, but even like Clark Phillips out of Utah, you look at Utah, had a really good team. This kid's a little undersized, but he plays hard. He puts his nose in there, good special teams guy. I think he's probably going to be 2nd, 3rd round pick. And then you look at Jay Ward out of LSU. He is a senior, so I know when it comes to age, we were like, oh man, what took you so long? But just, had a really good Senior Bowl. And then you think about his ability coming from the SEC, playing at a school that considers themselves at one point DBU, now receiver U. I mean, it's the pedigree, it's the coaching staff they learn from. And then how quick, because I hear a lot of GMs say this, how quick can he transition from the college game to the pro game? And that's where I think you have to, like Gabe said, the linebacker from Texas. Well, who was his coach? What did they learn? How did I loved hearing some of the behind the scenes stuff. They said they would put players in the lunchroom, have fake lunchroom staff, serve them incorrectly just to see how they handle stuff like that. Like, how do they handle the wait staff? How do they treat the person pushing the elevator button for them? How do they treat the bathroom attendant? And he's like, the bathroom attendant was my 3rd scout from college, whatever, recruiting, and they didn't know. And he's like, I'll put him in the bathroom and just say, hey, hand out paper towels and see how these guys act in the bathroom. He's like, I put them in a hotel at the bar and they would act like they're just drinking and hanging out. Just see how the players hang out in the lobby of I was like, man, I had no idea.
Yeah.
Right. I said, I had no idea what they do. Right. And I think that it was the old GM of the Bucs. I think he was on NFL Network, but it was crazy of like the stuff that they go through to try to figure out, especially their 1st round picks. But, their core guys are like, I don't know if we should take this guy this high. What did he do in this 30 visit, like Gabe said, when you bring him up? So I think day 3 for me, I think as well, I think you try to create more picks, or if you really have a guy, move up to go get him, and then you leverage maybe next year. Because again, it's always about leveraging and mortgaging your future and saying, how can I subsidize this to add more picks? But hey, it's going to be a fun next couple of days for the draft. We're going to have a lot of draft coverage. The Minnesota Vikings 2023 season has started, but we're going to get Gabe Henderson out of here. Appreciate you, Gabe, for joining us today on the Locked On Sports Roundtable. Well, hey, people, make sure you jump on FanDuel.com/locked on to get started today. It's going to make every moment more. Why? I mean, I know the Wolves are done. The Wild are kind of still going, but the NFL draft and the NFL season, now it's time to get those early bets in. Who is going to be the Super Bowl favorite? I know every year people put money down on their team. This is the time now to go put some money down on the Minnesota Vikings. You never know. Maybe just say they're going to win the NFC North, because I think they're going to do that for sure when you look at the Packers, the Bears, and the Lions. And we'll talk about that in a minute. But remember, FanDuel.com/locked on to get started today. Well, fellas, really quick before we get out of here, man, like I just said, let's take 1 minute on this one. The Minnesota Vikings, betting favorites to win the NFC North at this point. When you look at the Packers, you look at what the Lions are doing. Very weird, but I will say the Lions are getting Dan Campbell guys. You look at the middle linebacker they got from Iowa. You look at the running back they got from Alabama. These are Dan Campbell type ground and pound. DeAndre Swift's going to be there to play running back. Jared Goff, take pressure off him. But early on, and then, sorry, I'm not to disrespect the Bears. Sorry, Bears fans out there. Not disrespect, but I think the Bears and the Packers are going to be fighting for third and fourth. But Sam, early, quick, what do you think about the NFC North right now?
Well, we haven't touched on the Lions draft really confusing some people. And it's not that they didn't get good players, but if you look at the projections, they took Gibbs and Campbell way earlier than they needed to. And remember, the Lions had 4 picks or 5 picks in the top 60. Like, they could have easily waited and probably snagged one or both of them in the later picks. They took Gibbs at 12 and Campbell at 18. Yeah. And again, those are 2 positions that are a little undervalued in today's NFL. And they had already signed players in free agency at those positions to long-term deals. Very head-scratching moves by Detroit. I do think Gibbs will improve their offense, certainly. It's just not as good of a long-term play to draft a running back that high. So I feel like Detroit didn't really bolster their NFC North hopes. I think the Vikings did with Addison. I think that it's neck and neck right now. I think that the Lions are right there with Minnesota, but I almost think Minnesota has a slight leg up because I think their offense is just a little more talented.
Yeah, Luke.
Yeah, let me swing over to the Packers. Lucas Van Ness, they just can't help taking more defensive players. They took 2 in the first round last year. Now Lucas Van Ness, who I thought, yes, in a vacuum, could be a really good defensive end, but probably 10, 15 picks higher than most people had him projected. And what are you doing now that you finally end the Aaron Rodgers era? You bring in this new young kid, surround him with some help, will you? Give him some weapons to throw to. Yes, they got Christian Watson, pretty good 1-2 punch to say the least in the running game. But outside of that, what happens when you want to spread them out 3, 4, 5 wide? You had 2 great tight end options on the board in Dalton Kincaid and Michael Mayer. You had Jackson Smith and Jigba, a lot of people's wide receiver number 1 sitting there. Couldn't believe the Packers passed up on helping Jordan Love in this new chapter in the Packers organization and went defense once again. Chicago, just real quick, Ron, can't believe they passed up on Jalen Carter. Remember, he was in the discussion 3 months ago when we started to talk draft in the first place. Jalen Carter, Will Anderson. If Chicago picks at 1, you could totally justify either one of those picks going number 1. They get him all the way at number 9. He's sitting there, and they decide to move down 1 pick with Philly, let Philly snipe him for what, an extra 4th round pick? You need to add good football players and build this roster back up from the studs. And passing on Jalen Carter, that's a huge win for the rest of the NFC North.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at Darnell Wright, though, I will say this for the Bears. What was the biggest issue with the Bears? Offensive line. Their offensive line was absolutely terrible. Justin Fields had no time to throw the ball because everybody was saying if you watch the tape, he's always running, which is one of the reasons why he led the league in rushing, for quarterbacks, led the league in rushing. But when you think about this offensive line, I think that's the key for them. I know Courtney Cronin, she did the mock draft for ESPN, and she had them taking Skoronski. So they were always looking at offensive linemen. I think that was the inside for the Bears the entire time was we need to rebuild this line for Justin Fields. So they did get a guy. I don't think they got the guy people thought they would get, but clearly, and this is the thing about draft picks, you never really know what you're going to get. I mean, we could all say, oh, you got to go get this guy. But Hendon Hooker, when you watch the tape, you see Darnell Wright. And I will say that. When you watch the Hendon Hooker tape, you see Darnell Wright. Why? Because Hendon Hooker has time. He's not getting rushed out of the pocket. He has a ton of time to survey the field. If you watch the Alabama game going up against Will Anderson Jr., he had time. Like he was going toe for toe, 49-49 with Bryce Young. So that's why I think Darnell Wright is a solid pick for the Bears just to build it up for Justin Fields. Why are the Eagles so good? Their offensive line. And I think the Bears are like, okay, we got a watered down version with Justin Fields and what they see with Jalen Hurts. So I think that's their goal now is like, let's go get an offensive line. My guess is they do exactly what the Eagles are doing. I do agree they should have added a defensive lineman because the Eagles, of course, did it. But what's more important? Protecting your quarterback. If you're going to actually put money into this franchise QB and he's your future, you got to protect him, and that's why they did that. Last one before we get out of here, man. Quick one, Wolves and Wild. Wolves season's over. In my opinion, I just think it's time to figure out this roster. If you're going to go with the Twin Towers, you got to put some scores around them. If you're not, move on, see who you can get the most for, and bring in another scorer to help Anthony Edwards. The teams in the playoffs right now that are succeeding are teams with double scores. You look at James Harden and Joel Embiid, double scores. You look at what's his name, Devin Booker and Kevin Durant, double scores. At one point you had the Clippers with Kawhi and Paul George, double scores. So what makes, and LeBron and AD and now D'Angelo, but they're all scorers. Rudy Gobert's not a scorer. Karl-Anthony Towns is hot and cold, and Anthony Edwards, you sometimes don't know he's there. So Wolves season's over. I think it's time to figure out what they're going to do. I don't know. Any thoughts on that, Luke?
Yeah, this is going to go one of two ways. Either they're going to blow the whole thing up. They trade a pillar like Cat. They trade a pillar and cut their losses on Rudy, take pennies on the dollar, or they're going to sit there and they're going to sit there, talk themselves into justifying running it all the way back and say to themselves, well, we were never healthy for any stretch at all last season. And it was the injuries that hurt us more than anything else. So it's going to be interesting to see their approach. I do think the talent is there. You get Naz Reid and Jaden back. It's never been clearer. Anthony Edwards, it's his team now. And as a GM, you got to do everything you can in your power to build around this kid. Give him everything he needs to continue to excel and develop into the superstar that he's shown the world he can be. He's the clear bright spot. Do everything you can to add some help around him.
Yeah, Sam?
Yeah. On one hand, I'm torn because on one hand, it feels irresponsible to do nothing. It feels like there needs to be an adjustment made. But at the same time, Luke makes a good point that injuries were a huge factor in why this team didn't get a higher seed. If Towns plays those 52 games, surely you're going to win 5 more and be like a 3 seed in the playoffs. So, I mean, that all could change if you do it all again. I do wonder if it's easier for them to change the coach. Like, it's hard to move Rudy. It's risky to move Cat. Maybe you just change Chris Finch. I mean, people certainly have had their gripes with his inability to kind of right the ship late in games. Maybe not having a great pulse on the team because the locker room chemistry seemed a little messed up. Maybe that's the move because it's always easier to change the coach than the players, especially when the players are making $50 million. I think the only way that I would be okay with trading Cat, I guess if you get 4 first-round picks, that's great too. But if you traded him straight up for a big name, like a Damian Lillard coming to Minnesota, that would get me excited. Other than that, I don't love trading Cat. I just think there's too much talent there, and I don't think you can score enough without him on this roster.
I'm always down for Dame time. So before we get out of here, though, last quick one. Wild play tonight, 3-2. Their backs are against the wall, 8:30 p.m. Puck drop. The draft will be going on, so I will have the draft on one TV and then maybe a little hockey here and there whenever I can stream it and see it and look on my iPad. So I will be trying to check out both, but I'm going to have my eyes on the draft. I just want to see. I got to do a reaction video again for the Vikings, so I got to pay attention. It's my job. So that's why I love to tell my wife that. Like, hey, I'm in my office. I'm working tonight. I got to watch the draft. Best job ever, people. But last one, Sam, I know you're a big hockey guy. What do the Wild need to do to win this?
Stay out of the penalty box. I mean, the league has already apologized to them for getting calls wrong in game 4 that cost them that game. And in game 5, they apologized again. They said, well, we shouldn't have kicked Foligno out of the game. It should have been just a 2-minute penalty. Well, thanks NHL. You're going to reverse the outcome of those games. I have a bad feeling about it. It's just a little bit of deja vu from last year where they seem to have control of the series and they lost 3 in a row. And remember, guys, last year in game 6, trying to extend the series, they didn't have any fight at all. So tonight you're at home. You've got the crowd to energize you. I assume Gustafson's your goaltender, but we'll see. We'll see if Fleury maybe gets a surprise nod. That would be very controversial. But they don't seem healthy right now. I mean, Zuccarello and Hartman if you end the season with Flower in the pipes behind in the net, I think there's going to be a riot in downtown St. Paul. I just do. Yeah, you got to ride the Gus bus all the way to the end. They're banged up. I don't know if Kaprizov is fully healthy either. Hartman and Zuccarello are banged up. You don't have Eriksson Ek, so that's another team that, again, you can use the injury excuse, but they can win. They can win this game. I just don't have a good feeling about it.
Well, fellas, that was a great. I love the conversation today. Draft talk. Draft is coming up 6 p.m. the commissioner will hit the stage. And let's see if he bends that knee again for somebody that wants to maybe pick him up later in the season, because he's done with his stage stuff. But the NFL draft is still going to be going. The Minnesota Vikings have the 3rd round pick. We will see if they decide to either add more picks or trade up into the 2nd round and get a guy they really want. But I'm Ron Johnson. That's Sam Extra. That's Luke Inman. We had Gabe Henderson from the Minnesota Vikings joining us earlier today. So please make sure you go back and check that out. Have a great day, people. And remember, subscribe, follow, iTunes, iHeartMedia app, wherever you get your podcasts. And have a great day.